This is Magnus Carlsen, a player known for outplaying his opponents in long, complex endgames, but in today's video, we will be focusing on the quickest wins in his career. So let's get started. Game number 1 is Magnus versus Bill Gates. Bill Gates goes for e4, and Magnus responds with the Nimzowitsch defense. Magnus then strikes in the center with d5, and Gates defends with the bishop. Magnus moves his knight to f6, and they trade pawns in the center. White kicks the queen, and it evacuates to h4. After some thought, Bill Gates castles. Magnus pressures the knight and sacrifices the bishop. This is completely winning for white. However, Bill Gates is no super grand master. He snaps off the bishop, and Magnus takes back. Gates takes the knight, a massive blunder, which allows Magnus to mate him on h2. After starting on 30 seconds, Magnus still has 18 seconds on his clock, meaning he only spent 12 seconds throughout the game. Before we look at the next game, please consider subscribing for more chess content like this. Game number 2 is Magnus versus Sergei Karyakin. The players go for a king's pawn opening, which quickly turns into a Ruy Lopez. White puts pressure on the center by targeting its defender with the bishop. Magnus trades, losing the bishop pair but damaging black's structure. Both players castle and finish developing their pieces. Magnus offers an exchange of bishops, but Sergei has other ideas. Magnus pins the knight and Sergei kicks the bishop. Then, after a long think, Sergei plays g5, a risky move which creates attacking chances for both players. Magnus thinks for a second and then plays g4, counterattacking the bishop and gaining space on the king side. Both bishops retreat and Magnus starts an attack with h4. Magnus begins to move his pieces to the king side, starting with the knight, then the rook. Some more moves are played and Magnus gets into a dominant position where his knight is far more useful than black's bishop. Magnus begins to infiltrate along the h-file and his attack is looking scary. They trade rooks and Magnus grabs the f6 pawn with his knight. Karyakin sacrifices the exchange because Magnus's knight is too strong. They keep shuffling until this happens. Sergei resigns here because checkmate is coming very soon. Throughout this 3-minute game, Magnus only used 1 minute. The last game is Magnus versus FM Espen-Agdestein. Magnus plays g3, the king's fianchetto opening. Black takes control of the center and both players develop normally. Magnus strikes back in the center with e4 before both players finish developing and castle their kings. They trade in the center and Magnus reroutes the knight. This is the start of a lethal attack. Both players move their pieces to the king's side and a knight trade allows Magnus to centralize his rook. Agdestein moves out the way of the pin, but little does he know it's already too late. Magnus sacks the knight on g7 to get a lethal mating attack, and in only a few more moves, Magnus forces his opponent to resign, this time after only 18 seconds.